aside from sharing the a full ritual or whatever, one of the things that a person does is one establishes what they are, gives themselves a cosmological placement, and then operates from that platform. So they go for they represent spirit, they represent the planets, the elements, the zodiac, whatever way of defining the world that they're going to look at. And so what are your thoughts about Drot comes in MIlin?
Well, I picked up, world control. Will it, get any better? Is there any true hope with the votes? For me personally, I've got to pick the ways that goes to non-conforming. I just can't conform to a belief that I feel is right for anything. The robots are already here. You might as well say if a robot don't have the thinking capacity, and maybe I should stop right there.
Well, okay. In the last one, the last of the 10 sections, and it's 11 lines, are probably the thing to be most careful of in commenting, because see, it talks about things going on that are going to attack us, but it's the actual thing itself, it's the response to it. These 7 things kind of imply that it's not quite the ailments themselves, it's the responses that are made to those ailments. And just like what happened yesterday that we're talking about, and this Visaga Millennium prophecy became more famous because of what it said before September 11th, 2001, that kind of made people think of September, big old building, the original booklet for this said that, that he saw, at least when it was the DVD, but anyways, there was this booklet that came, several pages or something like that, just a wee little thing, the size of it too. But the this little pamphlet that you got, it mentioned something along the lines of he saw a vision of water covering some papers. He saw, whether that meant the sprinkler system, and he saw papers scattered about, and some things were obscured. And he thought this referred to the whole September 11th thing, that stuff was being obscured in regards to September 11th. And we know that some major fraud that involved stuff done in government or organizations to sort of the highest level, that was all held back. Oh, we can't investigate that because that part of the building's been destroyed. And here's a building that wasn't even hit by a plane, and some stuff happened there, so we don't know the records there, because that's all gone now. But passports can fall out of the sky, right? Passports can fall out of the sky, and for everybody involved, so we know who was involved, and it's like, doesn't prove anything, but anyway,
I can remember seeing it on the morning news, and I just remember seeing how they replayed it just so many times over and over.
Well, the thing for me was that it's like it didn't matter. See, I wasn't too questioning about the narrative, but I was like, first of all, I remember I had a VHS tape, and supposedly somebody borrowed it, and I was told it probably got moved to Pakistan, which is probably a better place for it than here, I guess. But I was watching the thing of February 2001. And I had the clip there. The Taliban was like trying to make a deal with the Bush administration, saying, this guy Osama bin Laden, he's a problem for us. We want to work together. It's like, no, we don't want to do anything like that. And Bush kept forgetting the stuff about the whole. And I'm trying to be careful with my phrasing here, but Bush Bush forgot at times what the war was about, but the thing was, it's like, really, if there's 48 people, can't you make a deal with the local government instead of bombing the local government to deal with them now? Wasn't that the thing? Couldn't you have dealt with them in the first place? And Al Qaeda wasn't a terrorist organization. It was a bunch of war vets trained by the CIA. It was a list. And so the beginning of September, they had a documentary that came out that by the end of the year was not available anymore. You couldn't buy it. It was listed anywhere. They removed the reference to it online, about how Al Qaeda was a bunch of war heroes that helped defeat the USSR. That was it. It wasn't some organization. You could go to I saw myself a sign. It was one of the guy's credentials. He was Al Qaeda. So he was trained by the CIA. He was one of those war vets that they trained, and he was giving a speech on living a religious life or something like that. And you could list that in public in 2001, but by the end of the year, they called it a terrorist organization, which I don't understand. Now, am I support? People's like, no, I'm absolutely not supporting terrorism. What I'm saying is that they've changed the narrative on us, and just like the opening 3 lines, the first part of 10, something. It has to be for all countries. It can't be, it's like, we don't care what happens in this country because it's the interest of us. Or it's like, but it's not even our interest, it's the corporate interest. And then you can't criticize people that are corporate leaders that are part of one group or another. And it's like, that's not how it works. That it is how it works, but it shouldn't be how it works. And we talk about democracy. Democracy isn't spreading, getting everybody to do what we want them to do. That's not democracy.
Great.
And America was never a democracy. There might have been some Native American tribes that were democracies, but America was set up as a constitutional republic, which means in theory, it started as a little bit to the right, and now it's a little bit to the left, and it's getting more and more towards the left. By left, I mean level of government control, less freedom, stuff like that. It's moving toward corporatism is really just a new word for fascism. And communism and socialism, they're not necessarily totalitarian, but they're towards that direction. They tend, now there's a right way to do it, but they tend to be, there's someone in charge. It's like early Christianity can be said to be communist, but communist in the way that Paul and the people that were up close with Paul got better than everybody else. So everybody worked together and shared the property in common, except, this guy had to, it's like, so there's somebody at the top, just like the socialism that appeared in the Greeks. It really was to produce as much as possible, but there was a leadership class, and they got a bigger share than everybody, clearly.
Yeah.
And so in the next, how many lines? Okay, the next 10 lines is the second section. And so it does make a difference to vote, but then again, we see in some countries that it's obvious that something's happened. But we can do what they do in India. If the average person gets barely over $1 a day, and they all have voter IDs and all that other stuff, the idea that they're trying to remove voter IDs and they're making it so people can't vote in person, can vote without voting in person for no reason. You can't have people like that walk in front of a camera. That's idiocy. And if you ever question anything weird that happens that sounds like fraud, it's like a crime, and it's like that's not how it ever was. But and we notice that stuff is happening, that humans that we have our free will, but we're given the illusion that we don't have the options that we have, and sometimes, you know, we shouldn't have to wander more or less in the dark to find out just how much ability we have, because we've been told that we don't have, that stuff isn't even an option. It's, we don't even have the ability. And it's like, it turns out we do. Or there's stuff that most, you know, it could take 100 people doing something for one person to succeed at it, but it's some of that stuff, it's worth it. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. Some of this stuff, it's like, oh, if everybody does uncomfortable things, then 1 out of 100 people won't get cancer. It's like, I don't know about that. You know, if people have to do regularly do painful and uncomfortable things, so 1 in 100 people won't get cancer. I mean, most people are going to still get other cancers, right? So, and then there's more infections, so they're going to get more infections, but they're not going to get cancer. Some of these things they try to push it on us, it doesn't make much sense. People that we're under 10 minutes, so the next section, four things, you know, health. We one of the things that spiritually, to use your mind and all that stuff, and to show your gratitude for your body and that sort of thing, you do need to regard your health, whether that's control of your behavior one way or another. And people, you know, in the Iraq War, one of the first things they did was destroy the non-GMO seed bank in Iraq. Iraq had the biggest non-GMO, if not the world, definitely in the Muslim majority countries, they had the biggest seed bank, and they destroyed the seed bank. They targeted the seed bank in the war. So the GMO and all that other stuff is things, and now people are saying, oh, why don't you gather up the cockroach, try to catch cockroaches and eat that? That's a good source of protein. And it's like, what? And you know, you have fibers, you have bits of plastic and foam and all sorts of stuff that they're trying to insert into food. It's like the fact that they had a socially pressure subway, was it? They had bits. There was a chemical that was common to yoga mat foam, and they were put into the Subway sandwiches, and people were like, well, it's non-toxic. It's like, yeah, but it's little bits. It's like imagining chewing up stuff. You're not a mouse. You're not a mouse. Those little bits of stuff are going to get stuck over time, and you don't want, just like, I know a family member that ate these muffins, and these muffins had this fiber that you could rinse down the muffin and pick out the fibers that were non-food fibers from it. And they, you know, over time, that can really do a number on your digestion. It usually won't, but, you know, it's not something to try. And people talk about, you know, there's not a shortage of resources, water or anything else. It's just things have to be used a certain way.
Yeah.
I guess we're down to a minute per section. Go ahead. There's the next section is 5 lines. And the next one basically, you know what they're trying to do with that racial stuff. They're trying to turn things against one another, and if you complain about it, then you're anti-Semitic. If you say we have a common enemy among the corrupt elite, it's like, oh, that's you can't even say that. That's whatever. It's like, I don't know if he is or not, but I think if David Duke is no longer racist, we should applaud him for making that change. That if he's saying the blacks and whites have to get along, I think that's something we should encourage him in him, not discourage.
Like in the 80s and 90s, we all got along, you know, the white and the black people. I remember it. I was there.
It wasn't a thing. And now it's cultural appropriation if you rap or you play country music in your wrong color or something like that. But this next section, see, democracy, the thing about democracy, it has to be, if you have democracy rather than a republic, what you got to do is you got to make it so everything is, now Iran's not perfect, but Iran says that your religious minorities can, you know, they're permitted people. If they're not permitted people, they're protected people. They take it further than that. So they make sure to protect your rights. You can't have, say, this is popular or unpopular, and then you pass the law based on what's popular or unpopular. Then the media can change your opinion, and then they can do all this other stuff. The drugs that you use are wrong, but the ones that I use are okay. You know, that's that sort of thing. You know, take whatever you're prescribed, but don't try to enjoy yourself when you take your pills. That's wrong.
Right.
You know, like they have the moral high ground or something. And the next 5 years, one of the things that has came in with all now in tolerance is important, but one of the things that has came through with a lot of the things in the past is that the tolerance that people have been pushed where other stuff has came in to the point where they legalized some incest on the side in several states because they were legalizing some of the other stuff that they should have legalized. Like some states you couldn't, until the Civil Rights Act, you couldn't have interracial marriage or something like that. And so some of the stuff, so there's, you know, because you know what was brought up. And when you throw in messed up stuff like that, it's going to create problems too.
Yeah.
These problems get violent. It's like one of the things about the so-called sexual revolution of the Norse people is it led towards a lot of the wars and stuff that they did because they figured, you know, it's humanity. It's not a new thing. The stuff that we think is new and advanced, it goes through.
Yeah.
And so the last section, which I said was 11 lines, one of the other things too is, you know, if insanity is dangerous, sure, put people aside, right? If genetic modification is whatever, but they're going too far with genetic modification, they don't know, or they either don't know or they do know what it can do, and they, you know, things can go through that. There's stuff, there's mushrooms and other plants that can be used to heal. There are safer drugs, but it's about what is made by the big banks, what the big companies, what they personally want. And are you going to be slave to, you know, the ninth section here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 3, okay, that's 12 lines. You know, morality's switched to the point where like people literally look at that footage of 9/11, people jumping out of buildings. It's like, first of all, they could have, you know, there's a chance of survival even following stories, and here you are burning to death because of what's happening. You don't know what their intentions were, but people talk about, you know, there's a difference between a suicide mission and suicide bombing. There's a difference between all this sort of stuff. And whether a person's rich or poor, you don't work for merely the material things. That was one of the things that sort of differed. The Protestants and the Catholics sort of split up upon the idea of what's the thing. Is the Catholics figured you worked for a living, then you went home to your family and stuff, and the Protestants started getting this capitalist idea of you want to make as much money as possible, but then you become a slave to business and a slave to that sort of thing.
Right.
And the 8th section is only 3 things, and whether you like something or not, it's, you know, you don't go about killing the animals that you don't want. It talks about but it talks about these feminine mysteries. Either one of the, if you look at the symbolism in society, either you got the psychological symbols or you got the sexual symbols, and that's the majority. The ancient world, Islam, and now more of the rest of the world is getting into this symbolism. That rather than focusing on abstract planets and stuff, that's still there, but the focus is more psychological and more sexual than it is whatever. But people in this war of the sexes, there's going to be a turn back against this war of the sexes, and it's going to deal with the female, and it's going to, of course, so there's information encoded in some of those images too. And I'm try to say real quick, and then I'll completely hand it over to you for the last minute. So the 7th section is 5 verses, and it talks about, you know, basically the thing that we're witnessing right now is that we're, you know, everything's set up. The government's even you know, the government and the companies are even gearing things in a way towards who they want to pair up and all that stuff. But arranged marriage doesn't have to be forced marriage. That's an important point that people confuse, is they're not the same thing. And so 9 verses in part 6. And one of the things we do from that, if we let them program us with their media, is we change our own memories. Our good memories are turned into bad memories. The people who are our friends, we decide they're not our friends for no reason whatsoever. People group things together. I mean, people may vote for a different political party because they think that this is the best way to turn their vote, for the very same reason that the other person's voting for a candidate or a party or whatever. And we don't really know who are the individuals in society, and people are like, yeah, you know, they think things are more important than the people operating the thing, or the person, or the animal, over the human, and like we all have a real interest. And you know, final thoughts to you.